Guys, welcome back to Facebook Live. I'm Harry, joined by Doc as always.
Hello everybody.
Please leave your questions in the comments below and we will get round to answer them on the live stream here, and if we don't get round to doing it live, then I'm sure we'll get round to doing them after this video goes live.
Yes, and if you just want to say, hey, I'm X from Y in country Z, we love to hear from you because it's nice to know who we're reaching.
And we can give you a shout out on the stream as well, so it's all good. And you've just Christmased for the occasion. I'm impressed.
Have I? I'd actually got used to this. I couldn't feel I was wearing it anymore, which is just as well, because I think if I'd ridden home on my bicycle with this, I might get laughed at, even in the dark. Because it would be streaming out behind me.
Yes,
quite exciting.
So yeah, we're going to do a tiny bit of a different Facebook Live for the last live of the year and the decade as well. So
2019, who would have thought?
Who would have thought?
How time flies when you're having fun.
So we're going to talk a bit about Christmas gifts and tech gifts in particular.
Yes.
As we've all had this kind of scenario before, it could be a little bit awkward if you receive a gift at Christmas which you're not too keen on, or you've got certain views about because you might have issues with it or opinions on it, maybe even privacy issues if it comes to tech gifts. So I just thought we'd talk about a few which people receive quite a lot. You know, what's the notorious kind of privacy issues with certain tech gifts?
Yeah, those of you who watched last week's Naked Security Live, you'll know that we did discuss a particular type of device, which is kids' smartwatches. They get into the news a lot. They're quite notorious for having privacy blunders, probably for two main reasons. One, they're kind of built down to a price because it's only a kid's watch. After all, it might get smashed or damaged, so you're not going to pay $400 for it. And because, of course, the whole idea is they're about tracking the location of your kids so you can help to find them if they get lost or wander off. And if other people get that information, it kind of feels much worse if someone knows where your children are compared to where they know where you are. So they may get overrepresented in the media, although they are something of a privacy issue. But of course, we're talking about all those other things that you might get that seem like cool gifts, that might seem mostly harmless to grandma or to your auntie or whatever who's giving you that gift for Christmas, say. Things like webcams, baby monitors, doorbells, home automation stuff that maybe you clip onto an electricity cable and it monitors your power. They can be great ideas, but in some cases they might be designed in such a way that while they're operating and just trying to do possibly even a very simple function, like detect that there's someone at the door, what if they're actually leaking information about whether you're at home or whether you're not at home? So there are all sorts of issues that make these somewhat more controversial gifts to give or to receive than just that really hideous jumper, that your auntie and uncle gave you last Christmas. And you kind of think, well, I'm probably never going to wear it, but every time you see auntie coming up the driveway, you rush upstairs and you put it on. And, there's no real big deal. Maybe the fashion police might get you, but you're not going to suffer a privacy disaster as a result. But if auntie buys you a webcam and says, oh, this will be really cool, it'll let you watch what's going on in your back garden while you're on vacation, then you might have examined that model and gone, you know what, they don't have a great reputation for safety, I don't want this on my network. So there's more at stake using a gift like that than there is wearing the dodgy jumper.
The dodgy jumper.
We've all had dodgy jumpers in our time.
I like the analogy. So when you get a present like this,
What, a dodgy jumper?
Well, not a dodgy jumper as such.
Because socks are okay, right? You just wear long trousers and then they're covered. Yeah.
So how can you let someone down gently, if they, for example, it's Christmas Day, you're around the Christmas tree and you open it up and you see a voice assistant and you think, oh crap, I've heard about that and things like that. There are lots of voice assistants on the market. We're careful not to mention brands here. There are many different choices. They're understandably very popular because they're quite cool. Loads of people use them and they can be used securely. But it is difficult if you've decided, you know what, I just don't want one of these in my life for a whole load of reasons. It is a little bit difficult if somebody presents you with one, because the next time they visit they'll expect it to be there in the middle of the lounge table so they can say, oi voice assistant, play grandma's favourite music, and that may not be one. So what I recommend is don't have a privacy, what you might call a privacy showdown on Christmas Day. It's probably not the time, or whatever your festival is where you're giving and receiving gifts. It's probably not the time, if you're supposed to be the season of goodwill and cheeriness, to stand up and start lecturing about surveillance society and privacy. You can do that later. So what you could do with it, if you genuinely don't want the gift, but you think that it's actually of a satisfactory quality that you'd be willing to pass it on or sell it to somebody else, then you could do that. Maybe you could find someone who
really needs it, who couldn't afford it themselves, hand it on to them. Then you can, at your leisure in the future, maybe early next year, you can tell Auntie, you know that device, well, Auntie, you know what, I had a look at it and I decided, didn't really want it in my house, but you'll be glad to know that it's actually making, you know, a friend of mine really, really happy. Exactly. They really wanted one, they couldn't afford it, they're really in love with it. You know, you can have the difficult conversation about why you're not using the device later, but don't feel compelled just because, you know, a cousin that you haven't seen for 5 years gives you a device that they've got one in their house and they swear by this thing and they love it. It doesn't mean you have to, particularly if its goal is to, you know, take photos or record audio or interact with some cloud service that you haven't signed up to yet and have already decided you don't want to. So there is an element of tough love. You don't have to have a big showdown on Christmas Day, but you know, you can kind of explain it to them later if you're worried that when they come round they'll expect to see the thing sitting there and have the little light blinking to show that it's working. Like they can see you're wearing the jumper, but they can also see whether your voice assistant is working by just talking to it because they think it's cool. So, you know, it's a hard. In fact, the best thing to do if you haven't bought gifts or if you bought them from a shop where they can be exchanged, if you know that you're buying something for somebody who said, oh, I'd really love an X or a Y or a Z or this model of bike computer or this model of webcam or whatever, if you know that it's what they want because they've dropped the hint or told you outright, then you're good to go.
Yeah, of course.
Otherwise, as we said last week, what you could consider doing is give them a gift card for the shop where you would have bought it for about the same amount. That way they can spend it on something else if they want. You're not compelling them to choose a particular brand, and maybe they can put it towards a more expensive one or a different device if they want. So that's one way around it, is don't make the choice for them. Say, I was going to buy you this, but I'm aware of the fact that they're not for everybody, so knock yourself out.
Exactly. We've got a hello from Andy from the USA.
Hi, Andy.
And Teresa's had a really good question here. What do you suggest about gifts, devices, or any funny gadgets that plug into computers' USB?
Yes, that's the... In fact,
is this where we can swiftly move on?
We had like one of these. Hey, a wireless sniffer, so you can go wall biking. Yep. Harry wanted to give me this for Christmas. Actually, didn't. It's a one I got from Sophos, and I said, Harry, that's not a wireless sniffer. That's a wireless sniffer. So yeah, something like this. You get a device like this. It's got a USB port. You plug it in. What happens? Well, I guess that's another issue because you're not kind of sure what that device is going to do or how it might work or what it might connect to or what files it might have on it. The good news is that in the old days, 5 to 10 years ago, there was a very significant risk about randomly plugging in USB devices, because even if it was something like, wireless access point like this, USB, you'd think, oh, when I plug it in, it'll come up as a wireless device. I'll have to go and fetch the drivers and install them before it'll work. But a lot of devices had a sort of secret disk drive on there, so when you plugged them in, they automatically had the drivers on. They had programs that would auto-run, that was Microsoft's term, and that was quite dangerous because there were many cases of devices that were pre-infected by malware. We even were at a conference once, and Sophos we were at a conference, I gave a talk there in Australia, where a well-known vendor that I shan't mention actually handed out USB sticks with their brochures on, and it had not one but 2 viruses on it because they'd screwed up during the production process. So fortunately, though, the risk of those days are largely over because Microsoft turned off that feature that when you plug in the device, it doesn't generally start working. But there is a problem that there are some devices, this is actually an old Sophos USB access point, to be honest. This is a very straightforward device, it doesn't have anything weird about it, but you do get devices that to make them work, you need to sign up for a service. Maybe like it's a webcam, but it's designed to do some special feature. So once you're plugged in, it says, hey, go and create an account, go and put in your password, go and sign up, go and agree to these terms and conditions. Yeah. My recommendation, if you're faced with something like that, whether it's USB-based, whether it's network, Wi-Fi-based, Bluetooth-based, whatever it is, if there's a service you have to sign up to, maybe don't rush to do it on Christmas Day or Boxing Day. Yeah. Maybe get the festivities out of the way, go and read and take your time, and don't be in too much of a hurry to try out the new device, and maybe try and help the person who's given it to you as a gift. Obviously, they want to see you enjoying it if they know you wanted it. Yeah. But just say, well, I'm going to read the manual first. Yeah. They can't really complain at you about that. That's my recommendation.
Time, we're at 10 minutes in.
Great.
So, we've talked all about these different types of products then. What's your overall arching advice for people?
Let's finish up with that, in fact, that obviously there are going to be, like if Harry, I've already got this, so I don't need another. If you gave me one of these for Christmas, I'd be delighted and I'd want to start using it right away and trying it out. So for the devices that you do give someone, that they may say, okay, what tips have you got? Because you're giving it to them, or something you receive that you know you want, you know you're going to use. Here are my 4 tips. Number 1, go onto the vendor's website and see if there's a firmware update that's come out recently. So update the device before you go online with it. I actually realized just before this video that I'd forgotten to check for updates on my bike GPS computer for a little while. I went there was a time zone update, took me 1 minute to fetch it, so now I'm done and dusted for the holiday season. So if there is an update, you may as well get it, because it probably fixes at least one security problem. Number 2, if the device has some way for you to log into it, when you set it up, it's probably going to ask you to choose a password. And it's really, really, really easy if you're in the Christmas rush that you plug it in and you think, oh, I need a password, what should I do? I know, change me. And you think, I'll go back later. Change me is always in the top password list, because people put it in and then they forget. So don't do that. Pick proper passwords. I know we've said it many times before. The third thing I recommend you do on any device that you're connecting inside your network, whether you're connecting it via an Ethernet cable, a USB cable, Wi-Fi or whatever, go into your router and see if it has a setting called UPnP, or for Universal Plug and Play, and make sure that is turned off. In some older routers it is, and probably in some common routers it is on by default, and what it does is it tries to make devices on your network easy to find. And that's a brilliant idea if you're connecting 2 parts of an office together. You know, the first floor and the ground floor, and you're connecting together with Wi-Fi. They like to be able to see each other, and you can find upstairs' printer. It's not such a fantastic idea if it's a router that's separating your household from the internet, and suddenly by accident, this new webcam that you just plugged in is being advertised to the outside. And the last tip is, if you do go ahead, put the device on your network, and it does have features that let you access it from the outside or share data with the outside, you don't have to turn those on if you don't want to. So don't feel compelled, for example, with your brand new bike computer you got at Christmas. Hey, I'm going to go out for a celebratory ride and I'm going to turn on the share my location so the whole world can share my first ride. It's okay if you want to do that, but stop, think, connect. So don't rush into anything just because it's new and it's a gift. Exactly. Those are my 4 tips.
Yeah. Right, well, perfect. Well, if we haven't got round to answering your question live, we will get round to doing it after the live stream's finished. And I guess I can make the joke of see you next year, see you next decade.
Yes, 2020, what the Americans call perfect vision.
Thank you very much,
6-6
guys.
To the rest of the world.
See you later.
Until next decade, stay secure, hey?
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.